Hello, students. This is Ms. Hammonds. This video is to help you finish the lecture notes from Chapter 1. We got to negative feedback, which we stated was a reduce in whatever the initial stimulus is to get you back to your homeostasis, whereas a positive feedback would be an enhancement to that particular stimulus. Here where we have the feedback system, and it contains three basic components. Those components are the receptor, the control center, and the effectors. The receptor is going to be the portion within the body that receives the stimulus signal initially. It will send that to the control center, which will determine what needs to be done in response to that particular stimuli. And then from there, it will be sent to your effectors, usually going to be your glands, organs located within the body. And then, as I stated previously, the response depends upon whether or not it's a negative feedback or positive feedback. Negative feedback will reduce, whereas positive will enhance or intensify. All right, so looking at this diagram, and I want to say I mentioned that you needed to know this diagram for your exam. If not, please put a star beside that. And it just kind of goes through the steps that I just explained. The stimulus is the point where something has triggered. The receptors will detect that change and then submit it on the afferent pathway, which is toward the control center. From there, it's processed and then sent out on the efferent pathway to your effectors, where it will try to get the body back to its homeostasis. All right. We did already discuss the anatomical position. Let me get to the next set of notes, if you'll hold on just a moment. All right, my apology. This is the part 2 of the Chapter 1 lecture notes. The first thing that we have is the anatomical position. It is when the body is erect, feet are slightly apart, and the palms are facing forward. This is a standard way that autonomists view the body. Similar to how maps are oriented north, the anatomical position is that the body is standing upright with the feet and shoulders length apart. They're parallel from each other, and the toes are forward. The upper limbs are held out to each side, and the palms of the hands face forward, which means your thumb is facing upward. All right, so here where you have the three items, that would be that the body is erect, feet are slightly apart, and the palms are facing forward. The other two bullets are provided, and then at the top is that it is the standard anatomical position of the body. For the regional portion, see if I have that. All right, there is no slide for that, so I'm just going to provide you with that information. Regional terms, these are the terms that are specific to the area of the body to increase precision in identifying the area of the body. Example would be brachium, which is the arm. It is reserved for the upper arm and the antebrachium, or the forearm. It is used rather than saying lower arm. All right, so regional terms. All right, looking at what I have here, major divisions of the body, there are two major divisions of the body. The first one is the axle, which includes the head, neck, and trunk. And then second is appendicular, which is body limbs. The regional terms designate specific areas within the body. I want to say in your lab manuals, pages 2 and 3, and then there is slides 8 and 9 located within this PowerPoint that also goes over those regional terms. All right, directional terms. We discussed more about these in lab, but the directional terms are those that are essential in describing the relative location of different body structures, like where is the nose in reference to the cheeks, and so on and so forth. Below are some common directional terms that I'm going to go through. And on the chart, you'll actually be able to go back through and get some reference to its locations. They may not be in order as I have them here on the notes, so I'm just going to go through the notes. First is your anterior, may also be referred to as ventral. It describes the front or direction going toward the front of the body. An example would be toes are anterior to the foot. Next is posterior, also referred to as dorsal. It describes the back or direction towards the back of the body. The popliteus is posterior to the patella. So the popliteus is a muscle that's located posterior or dorsal to the patella. Now, I know I may be going through this a little quickly. My video time is short. So again, because it's recorded, you may go back and pause and rewind as you need to. Next is superior, may also be referred to as cranial. It describes a position above or higher than another part of the body. The orbits are superior to the oris. The orbits being the sockets for your eyes, and the oris being closer to the bottom of the, the oris is the mouth. So they'll be above the mouth, my apology. Next is inferior or caudal. Describes a position below or lower than another part of the body, for example, torso. It is near or towards the tail or the coccyx, or the lowest part of the spinal cord. Lateral describes the sides or direction toward the side of the body. The thumb, also referred to as pollex, is lateral to the digits. Proximal is closer to the origin of the body part or the point of attachment. The point of attachment would be referring to the limb, to the body trunk. Proximal would be closer to the origin of the body or the point of attachment to the limb or the body trunk. And then distal is further from the origin of the body part or further from the point of attachment of a limb or the body trunk. So again, I went through that quickly. The next 3 slides actually go through each one of the orientation and directional terms. It provides you with the definition, gives you an example of the direction, and then it provides an example. All right, and then this goes back to the regional terms. My apologies. I knew what it was, I just didn't know where I had my slide. All right, moving on in the notes. Now, my notes say be familiar with slides 62 and 63. I had actually did a combination of part A and part B of the PowerPoint, but I wasn't able to locate that. So for part B, this particular one, it's going to be slides 8 and 9. 8 and 9 is where you're going to find those directional terms, body planes and body sections. Let's see here. All right, so with the body planes and body divisions, I kind of went through that part. All right, body planes. Body plane is a flat surface which body or structure may be cut for anatomical study. A section is cut or sections may be cut along a body plane. And okay, here we are. So again, this slide goes with body plane and sections. The 3 most common body planes are sagittal, frontal, also referred to as coronal, transverse, which may also be referred to as horizontal. And then those items will go here. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about each one of the body planes. First is the sagittal, and I'm here on your notes. The sagittal body plane divides the body vertically into right and left parts. It produces a sagittal section if cut along this plane. And the sagittal would be, again, right and left parts, so right down the middle of the body. In your first blank, mid-sagittal is another way that you can refer to it. That means that it lies on the midline or right in the middle. Parasagittal goes here, and parasagittal is not on the midline. Let me see if I can. All right, so here is your mid-sagittal or median plane. Parasagittal would be off to the left or off to the right. So it won't be right down the middle. It'll kind of be to the left or to the right of the middle, to kind of give you a better understanding of that one. All right, and then next is our frontal plane. The frontal plane divides the body vertically. I'm sorry, I apologize. Divides the body vertically into anterior and posterior parts. So that is the front and the rear parts. It produces a frontal or coronal section. So it divides the body into anterior and posterior parts. So it gives you a front and a back. All right, next is our transverse, which is also on the same slide. All right, so transverse, also referred to as the horizontal plane, divides the body horizontally into superior and inferior parts. The division usually is on a 90-degree vertical plane, but the main thing that you need to know is that it's a top and a bottom. It does produce a cross section of the section of the body that is located on this particular plane. And then finally, oblique sections result in the cuts of angles other than 90-degree vertical angles. And I did not provide a space for that on your notes. All right, so this slide shows you each one of the planes, the frontal, median, and transverse. Again, you will see this diagram again, definitely in lab, possibly on lecture. If that is the case, when I provide you with the exam overview, a copy of this image will be located on there as well. And then below it gives you, I want to say MRI scans of each one of the planes as far as what portion of the body is seen. All right, next are our body cavities. We have two internal body cavities, which is the closed or internal environment. It provides different degrees of protections to the organs. All right, so we are here where we have body cavities. The first is the dorsal body cavity. Next is the ventral body cavity. Dorsal being the rear portion, ventral being the portion toward the front. The dorsal cavity, and we are here in this section, protects the nervous system specifically. It also has two subdivisions. The first is the cranial cavity, which encases the brain. Second is the vertebral cavity, which encases the spinal cord. On this diagram, which you will see both in lab and in lecture, it gives you the locations of the dorsal body cavity as a whole, and then the ventral body cavity as a whole. And then as you go through each one of those cavities, it shows you the separations or the sub-cavities located within. All right, next is our ventral body cavity. It houses the internal organs. They may also be referred to as viscera organs. There are two subdivisions, which is separated by the diaphragm. The first is the thoracic cavity. The second is the abdominal pelvic cavity. Right. First, looking at the thoracic cavity within the ventral, you have two pleural cavities. Each one of those surrounds a lung. You have your mediastinum, which contains the pericardial cavity, which is where your heart is located, and it's also surrounded by the thoracic organs. And then you have your pericardial cavity, which encloses the heart. I said that wrong. All right, let me go back to the diagram. My apologies. Y'all gotta forgive me. Okay, so your mediastinum is right above. The pericardial is the one located right below with your heart is located. So these are your plural, each one holding the lungs. The mediastinum is located right above, and then your pericardial. All right. All right. and then I did provide you with a copy of the diagram. The abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity information are listed on the notes. It just states that the abdominal cavity contains the stomach, the intestines, the spleens, and the liver, whereas the pelvic contains the urinary bladder, reproductive organs, and the rectum. Alrighty. Serosus membrane. All right, I apologize. So the serosus membrane is named specifically for the cavity and the organs that are associated with it. Each has a parietal and a visceral layer. I was here at the serosus membrane. I just realized I skipped a section. So the membrane of the ventral cavity. Let me go back there and then move forward. A serosus membrane is one of the thin membranes that cover the walls and the organs in the thoracic cavity, also in the abdominal pelvic cavities. The serosus membrane is a thin, double-layered membrane that has two parts, as I mentioned previously, the parietal and the visceral. The parietal is the portion that lines the internal body cavity within the walls. The visceral actually covers the internal organ. So visceral is located on the inside. The parietal is located on the exterior, or the part that's actually the out part of the body cavity walls. The layers are separated by a small slit filled with a serosus fluid. And then this fluid is secreted in both layers of the membrane, and it just kind of prevents friction between them rubbing together. Specifically now, the serosus membrane, as I stated, is a specific cavity and organs with association to the serosus fluid and membrane located within it. Pericardium is where the heart is located. The pleura is where you'll find the lungs, and the peritoneum is the location for your abdominal pelvic cavity. All right, so this particular one kind of just gives you a breakdown of the serosus membrane. If this was a balloon and you stick your hand inside of the balloon, the outer portion would be the parietal portion, the outer covering, and then on the inside where your hand is, the inner ball would be the visceral portion of it. All right, so next are the abdominal pelvic quadrants. Again, whenever you're trying to describe or identify an organ's area and you're using the 4 quadrants, always keep in reference the anatomical position. Remember that it's going to be the opposite of you. So if it's your right hand, it's the left hand of the body or the left side. If it's your left hand, it is the right side of the body or the right hand of the specimen laying on the table. So your 4 quadrants are left upper quadrant, left lower quadrant, LUQ and LLQ are acceptable as abbreviation terms for you to use. You also have the right upper quadrant and the right lower quadrant. All right, I already do that. There are 9 divisions used primarily by autonomists. These 9 regions just allow you to give more of a specific description of where an organ or an injury may be located. On this side, also located on your notes, you have each one of the 9 quadrants. And then on this side, it shows you underneath which organs would be located within those 9 quadrants. I don't know if I can increase the magnification here. Okay. So similar to your quadrants, you have your right and your left. And then the 3 quadrants that are located in the middle are just kind of named based on the area that they're located in. So on your right of the specimen, remember all of these are in reference to the anatomical position. You have your right hypochondriatic region, your right lumbar region, and your right iliac, also referred to as iguanal region. Down the center is the epigastric, right toward the top. In the center is the umbilical region, which I hope for most of you will help you remember that because it's close to your umbilical attachment site or your belly button. Excuse me. And bottom is the hypogastric region, or maybe referred to as the pubic region. Excuse me. Here we have the left hypochondriatic region, left lumbar region, and then the left iliac or left iguanal region. All right, and exposed to the environment, which would be some of the other body cavities located within the body, are your oral and digestive cavities, the nasal cavity, orbital cavities, which is the location of your eyes, mid-ear cavities, and then those which are not exposed to the environment would be your synovial cavities. These are going to actually be located within the joints of the body, and we'll speak about them in a later chapter. All right, guys, so this concludes chapter 1. If you have any questions, please feel free to give me a text or send me an email, and I'll do all that I can to assist you. Have a great day.